run from pillar to post, asking almost everybody. Just being sitting there and cutting when they have no clue, or attend symposia and know where to cut it from. So that is very important, because just cutting is not going to help anybody. It's going to be traumatic to the patient, and sometimes it's going to give very, very erroneous information, because they don't even know how to preserve. So I get most of my tissues in saline. So it doesn't really get, yeah.
Thank you very much, madam.
Procedure of biopsy must not be taken lightly. Preferably, it should be carried out by the surgeon who has to provide the final treatment, so that he can plan the site of biopsy, keeping in mind from where possibly he can take the best tissue pathology. Also keeping in mind the future incision and inclusion of that area in the incision of the tumor. So biopsy is not a operative procedure which can be handed over to anybody and everybody. It has to be done either by the surgeon himself or under his direct guidance.
Sir, I very much agree with you. Sometimes we do get biopsy, especially if it is infected lesion. And the small biopsy we receive that shows only inflammatory pathology, and the surgeon that the person has not touched the tumor tissue at all. So it should be done by a surgeon who knows that from where the biopsy is to be taken, so that we can give them a definitive.
We had a classical case, like I showed you, the one that was just sent to me like a wart. But
Yeah,
it was not a wart, it was actually a full-fledged non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was in the tonsillar fossils, and they had also not even worn gloves. So it was done very casually. It was only when we saw, I could have signed it off as inflammation, but then I went for opinion. It turned out to be something so bizarre. That was a classical case of why everybody should not touch a biopsy, and only the oral surgeons or the qualified surgeons should touch it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would request our worthy chairpersons to please honor Dr. Simarpreet Sandhu.
Vimal Kalia, the MDS in Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery. He is Dean Academics, Professor and Head, Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, DRS Dental College and Hospital, Panchkula. He is a renowned speaker at various national and international conferences and had an inspiring teacher in oral and maxillofacial surgery. I welcome you, sir.
Out. So the people who are the ones who are going to look under the microscope, you can easily WhatsApp everything to them and involve them. I believe there should be an open communication between everyone who is involved in providing the holistic treatment to the patient. So maybe WhatsApp the answer. Good morning, everyone, and everyone's familiar with this picture. But before that, I would have put your picture, ma'am, here because for a tribute to you, Dr. Mridu Manjari is not only my teacher, she's also co-guide in my thesis. And I still remember her golden words whenever I visited him during that time. Ma'am, grateful and indebted to you for being the guiding light in my life. And special blessings from Dr. Bal always and always. A father figure, and if he thinks we were good students, it is, Shatabdi is because of the engine and not because of the compartments which are running behind. You are the engine of the Shatabdi. Well, for another 15-20 minutes, keep your eyes and open as Amir Khan has opened up his eyes. And picture abhi baki hai dost, so I'll bring that in the end. So what we actually see, sometimes a complete picture. And so is when we are reading pathologies of the jaws and the maxillofacial region, we do come across some ambiguous pathologies like which have not been completely understood, the fibroosseous lesions and the giant cell lesions. I would first spend some about 10-15 minutes on fibroosseous lesions of the jaws and then go to the giant cell. Ma'am, अगर कोई गलती हो जाए तो बताना मत please. Can I have a column mic or something? It's So, fibroosseous lesion is a generic designation of a group of jaw disorders which is characterized by the replacement of bone by a benign connective tissue matrix. So, it is a generalized kind of a disease which may afflict so many bones of the body and also the jaw bones. And this matrix then displays a varying degree of mineralization. As the disease progresses, sometimes lots of osteoid and actually complete bone formation can also be seen. And sometimes cementum like round acellular intensely basophilic structures looking like cementicles may be also found in this, sometimes even cartilaginous tissues. Is it okay? Yeah, good. Yeah, I think so. I think everyone can hear. Thanks. It is very common in maxillofacial region. About 2% of the benign pathologies can be relating to fibroosseous lesions, and out of it 7% would be fibrous dysplasias. And exception is the fibrous dysplasia, which are actually found to be a little different from the ones which have been found in the long bones. This term is actually applied to cemento-ossifying dysplasias, fibrous dysplasias, and cemento-ossifying fibromas, as well as their subtypes. It's difficult to classify all of them and to remember impromptu the classifications. What exactly is needed by us is to know what is the nature of this lesion, how aggressive these lesions are, and how the patient is going to get affected by the presence of this disease. We have understood quite a bit of our fibroosseous lesions, but not in totality, and some of them still generate some kind of surprise to us. So hence there is no universally agreed on classification. This is one which we can easily use. This can be used clinically, so I'm just presenting it here. Also, a point of contention would be that if we do not maintain a communication between the radiologist, between the clinical surgeon, as well as or the diagnostician, and the histopathologist. Histopathologists need to know the radiographic picture in detail, sometimes also the clinical picture, and sometimes it's also important to them to know what is the age of the patient. So it is just not that small, little preserved, well-preserved tissue which is going without any communication to them, and usually it is that the radiographic features are not well mentioned. So then their reporting will be something like benign fibroosseous lesions, and you need to know which kinds, what is the aggressiveness of the lesions. They'll be able to communicate it back to you only if you have communicated all the information about your patient to the histopathologist. So it is one such situation where histopathology alone will not be a gold standard, because you will have to collectively have the data with you of the clinical picture, the history of the patient, the radiographic picture, as well as the histopathology, and maybe all four people can then label it as a fibroosseous lesion of the jaw. So a single lone entity will not be able to identify and say, okay, this is my last word. Hence, one must avoid the diagnostic pitfalls of over-diagnosing, because all these fibroosseous lesions may just look similar. Let me discuss a little bit of fibrous dysplasias. This is a congenital disorder. These words have to be remembered very well. Maybe it also appears in that questionnaire which you've been given. It's a congenital disorder. It's non-familial, and it's a metabolic disorder. Right? These are very important, and it may be because of some kind of a post-zygotic augmentation or mutation in the, they say in the literature it has GSA1C genes. So one has to use a very prudent clinico-pathological correlation in assessing these lesions. Radiology is very central to the diagnosis of fibroosseous lesions. So learn how to interpret your own X-rays. depend on a radiologist's report alone, because he has also not been communicated so many data of the patient which he might need before he can give you a clear picture. So, or usually it is that he casually looks at it and says, oh, there is a radiopaque lesion, this is the size, and that is all. Whereas we need more. So you need to interpret your x-rays. I will be showing some examples as well. For example, this kid, if you see, a smart little kid who knows all his brands, and he comes up to me and he tells me, there's something wrong here. There's no other symptom. But he says, when I look at the mirror, I don't like my face. If you see very carefully, there's something wrong here. You know, there can be 100 diagnostic situations appearing similarly. But let's look at the OPG. Can you see something in the bone all over here? But I need to know more, so we ordered a CBCT. Very carefully see the CBCT sections. Just the sagittal section, you can see. I'll go back again. I'm sure you're seeing this kind of appearance here. Lots of radiolucent areas, right? And they're merging imperceptibly with the rest of the normal appearing bone. Let's see another section of the same lesion. The cross section, and you can see the appearance of the bone here. Another lesion here. Kind of layers coming up, developing here, trabeculation. And as we go from anterior to the posterior into the ramus, you can see the extent of the lesion. Let's see the cross section coming from the lower border to superiorly. There is a bony expansion. There's no symptom in the patient, and it's at the angle. It involves one of the tooth germs. Have I emphasized my point very well that the radiographic appearance of these lesions is very, very important for diagnosis, right? Write it down. Most important is it will show you its clear picture, its nature also in the x-rays. This radiological assessment should include the anatomical location, the shape and exact size. Now the diagnostic criteria helps us to have the exact size through a CBCT, CT scans. Everything's gone digital, so it's very easy to have the exact pattern of the matrix, its destruction, measurements of those destructive sites. And the margins are very important because they will be suddenly the diseased tissue will merge into the bone. Important is this behavior has to be known. The lesion usually is occurring in the young individuals. You know, the first or the second decade is the most common. They are children, and also we have seen that there is a cessation of growth, or the disease process stops once the puberty is reached. So once it is very aggressive, and the patient is trying to, in case it is a craniofacial fibrous dysplasia involving many bones, then maybe a symptom like loss of vision, loss of hearing. These kind of symptoms, if they are appearing, then you need to interfere immediately. Otherwise, you can wait for puberty to occur and then see if any facial deformity is a resultant, and that is very easy for us to correct now. They do show lots of microscopic overlap, and hence what we need is a good clinical, radiological and histological correlation to reach a precise diagnosis. And thus I say histopathology alone cannot be a gold standard. It would be a teamwork approach to reach a precise diagnosis. And still we have so many cases, in spite of all this good correlation and new diagnostics, still it's not very easy to diagnose a fibrous dysplasia. Let's see a classical example. This young by coming in saying, look at this, and see, because of the painless nature of the lesion, you can see the extent of growth. This was the intraoral picture, and this is the OPG. So easy to appreciate and delineate this lesion out from here. The CT scan pictures are the same thing, and because the growth is very overpowering and there are lots of developing teeth, the teeth get incorporated as well. The 3D picture of the same, and as said, we must take a biopsy from a representative part of the lesion, a small little biopsy with gritty bone, and then yes, sit down with your pathologist. Understand the lesion. Understand the appearance and the extent and the quantification of the pathological tissue, where how much of matrix is present, how much of osteoid is present, how much of cartilage is present, because they are going to tell you whether this growth is going towards maturity or it is still immature and will go towards aggressiveness. Look at another picture, sit with them again, they will be able to tell you what cells these cells mean a lot. This osteoid tissue means a lot. This trabecular pattern means a lot. Everything is trying to tell you about itself. It is introducing, the disease is introducing itself to you. So it is just not by mugging up one thing, Chinese letter appearance. You ask fibrous dysplasia, histopathological picture, Chinese letter appearance. Even the Chinese are wondering what kind of letters are they talking of. And so there will be so many varied pictures, the varying amount of tissues which will be making their appearance. Each one, see, this is the kind of maturation on the laminar bone is getting formed here. So this area has matured. Now coming to the fact that after we have got all the information, the clinical, the radiographic and the histopathological, how to manage an fibrous dysplasia. Small lesions, they are amenable to complete resection. छोटा सा lesion है, patient जल्दी आया, फटाफट छोटा सी surgery करें, काट दें, remove the pathological tissue. But if they are large sized and diffuse lesions are present, particularly in the maxillary complex, where they can actually cross the boundaries with the bones they are having sutural relationship with, they become an issue. They usually tend to stabilize and essentially stop growing when skeletal maturation has reached. So wait till that time, don't be in a hurry to correct the facial deformity. Correct it once the patient shows that there is cessation of activity in this area. Only the cosmetic and functional deformity should be included. They shavings can be done or some recontouring can be done and the patients will be happy, but they can also sometimes show some kind of regrowth recurrence. And nowadays use of bisphosphonates is being researched, and maybe they are able to control the growth or maybe completely stop the growth. Another carry-on messages for the youngsters, radiation therapy is completely contraindicated because they can lead to sarcomatous changes. In the pathology, I was discussing with ma'am, she had discussed that case. We unfortunately lost that patient, but I also agree that too many surgeons were meddling. This patient was running from pillar to post and there was so much of surgical intervention being done. Maybe that patient had undergone a sarcomatous changes as well because of time and time again, and he also underwent corticosteroid therapy. Long-term follow-up is very, very important in all kind of pathologies. So is also true with fibrous dysplasias. And I'll show you one example of this lady who came initially. A biopsy was done and everything, and she was diagnosed as fibrous dysplasia. The growth, she was an adult, and then we had removed all the tissues. But then after some years, we found that the growth again started. You can see the extent is increasing. And our carry-on messages, don't leave these patients once you think you've given the symptomatic treatment or treatment is over. The treatment will carry on for a lifetime because you never know when the recurrences occur. So we had given her a denture and she comes back and says, my denture doesn't fit anymore. And after so many years, of 4 years, we found that the growth had recurred and we had to resect. A few words about giant cell lesions of the jaws. Sorry ma'am, I'll keep it very simple. and it's very difficult to bring two things together. They're major topics, and maybe we can have a symposium only on giant cell lesions. What are giant cells? They are like powerful bosses. They are like principal threats. They're all powerful. And when they don't get power enough, they add on all the HODs with them. And then they become giant cells. So that is how. So giant cells are not purposeless cells. They energize themselves by adding on lots of nuclear material to themselves and keeping the cytoplasm a little bit at bay, and become more stronger cells than as compared to mononuclear cells. Lots of examples ma'am used to tell that time, and Net has been very kind to us. Now we can pick up pictures and make our presentations better. This is the classification, so it is unending. So many lesions which will come in, which will have the presence of giant cells of various kinds, and the list goes on. We were also sleeping like this on the table thinking, giant cell lesion. So there are Langerhans type of giant cells, then foreign body giant cells, like a case shown by ma'am, and then there are those Howley appearance, Reed-Sternberg cells. And so easy ma'am now to, earlier we used to draw the diagrams on the blackboard, it's now easier to put it on the slide. So, and osteoclast. I would be taking two things, that is the central giant cells, central giant cell lesions, and peripheral giant cell lesions. So they are relatively common jaw lesions of young adults, and they have an unpredictable behavior. We have divided them into aggressive lesions and non-aggressive lesions. The aggressive lesions obviously would be treated aggressively, and the conservative management will come for me. I'll take it into the next thing. Understand the giant cell lesions of the jaw, the central giant cell lesions of the jaw. People do say that it is basically resultant of trauma. When trauma occurs, some bleeding will occur in that area. If the bleeding stops and the blood vessel contracts, it is fine. If it doesn't happen and there is a full flowing blood coming into that lesion, it would lead to an aneurysmal bone cyst kind of lesion. And if it is partially blocked and partially continuing, it may result into a giant cell lesion. They are benign but aggressively destructive. They cannot be considered now anymore as a reparative granulomas. Some of the books were writing them as reparative granulomas, but the amount of destruction they produce, we cannot use this word, otherwise it almost looks like a misnomer, gives a bad message. Everyone thinks, leave them alone, they are repairing, whereas they are actually destructing actively, hence we should not use the word reparative. They are... No, so that was just to make them understand, and like you said, in the lighter way. So a diagnostic workup should be done for such lesions. We should first make sure that they are not high pressure lesions, otherwise if you open up into these lesions, they can sometimes bleed a lot. One has to rule out hyperparathyroidism. That's very, very important. A very old case of mine, not good pictures, so let me, and also save some time and show you better pictures. Treatment would be thorough curettage of these lesions in the bony cavity, and nowadays intralesional corticosteroids can be given. Calcitonin is now being used by all of us. Earlier we were mentally very blocked to use calcitonin. Probably it is because we had not read enough and we did not know calcitonin too well. Now that time we used to justify it's very expensive, economically not viable, it's very painful. But I think particularly if it is a child who is involved into this kind of a lesion, calcitonin will make more sense to be used rather than causing destructive facial surgeries and aggressive treatments. So it is also available in the form of a nasal spray, and you can use the nasal spray and injectables together, or you can use only injectables for the patient. An aggressive giant cell lesion will require curettage or curettage plus peripheral ostectomy. I'll be coming to this in my second part of the presentation. I will not spend time here. I'll give you a nice example. This is Sahil. Sahil Kamji is a basketball player from Haryana, and he had a fall so many years back. This is what he told me in the history. And comes with a swelling of the jaw. And if I could just see some expansion of the bony tissue on the buccal aspect a little bit. And this was his clinical radiograph and OPG, and someone was trying to open up a root canal thinking this would be a radicular cyst. But look at the radiographic picture. You can see the scallop borders here, and completely the buccal cortex is torn. The cross section, you can see how there is no reactive bone on the sides here. It's normal bone, and then suddenly giant cell lesion starts. This is a typical copybook picture. Some resorption of the teeth here, and this is a 3D reconstruction, and you can see some lingual perforation. A biopsy of the same, revealing it to be a giant cell granuloma, central giant cell granuloma, and the attempt at curettage, because it's a very, very big lesion, removed and curettaged it. He's doing very well. Vis-a-vis, there is another similar appearing pathology, aneurysmal bone cyst. This is one of my publications in the Asian Journal, which is a similar appearing lesion, more destructive. This is the CT scan of the same. This is the open cavity, no lining, and this is the photomicrograph of the aneurysmal bone cyst. It is a contradiction in terms, since it is neither aneurysmal nor a cyst, but still I don't know why we call it aneurysmal bone cyst. It is actually just a central giant cell tumor with a large blood-filled spaces, and hence the treatment is just curettage. Similarly, appearing lesions which are present is peripheral giant cell proliferations that happens in the gums. And the periodontal ligament, see this case, this is again a published case of mine, and you can see that there is this kind of a crater-like defect in the bone, which is so diagnostic, and these lesions are large. And remember, when you start incising through these tissues, they will bleed a lot. So the idea is कि झटका देने, इसका हलाल करने की कोशिश करेंगे तो there will be only blood loss and more blood loss. So once you started the surgery, don't wait for someone to come and do some suction and make the field clean. One single stab and let the tissue be out, because the bed is going to be a little smaller than the actual tissue. The CT scan of the same, this huge, large lesion, and you can see inside, this is old, lots of vascularization in the tissues. It was very difficult to stop the bleeding. The idea is put a pack, then slowly tell your assistant to remove a little bit of the pack, the small amount of tissue which you will be able to stitch that, then remove the pack a little more posteriorly, then put another stitch. You can use silver, I use silver impregnated gel foam here to stop the bleeding, and then it was easy for us. This was the photomicrograph. So I would tell all the youngsters and impressionable minds and the learners in you that these pathologies are extremely important for our growth as a surgeon. You know why? Because they teach you a lot of oral medicine. They teach us lots of oral radiology, oral pathology. And yes, they also help us not into developing a diagnostic acumen, but also to acquire a surgical acumen. Because the more you cut, the more you learn, right? So once you come across these lesions, don't be in a hurry to just refer this to a department. Find out these lesions, investigate these lesions, study these lesions, and revisit the treatment outcome. As I told you, follow-ups are very, very important. So seek more, and then become good professional maxillofacial surgeons, dental surgeons, diagnosticians. God bless everyone. Thanks.
Any questions from the audience, please? Dr. Kalia, you are fortunate. There's no question at all.
Excuse me, ma'am.
You-
I don't understand anything.
You were very good.
I have a question to ask. Dr.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question about a topic about a lesion you have about a giant cell tumor. Giant cell tumor of the jaw. So, what is the variation in the treatment of a giant cell tumor of the jaw and a giant cell carcinoma with an aggressive variant or non-aggressive variant? Is there any different treatment modality of a giant cell tumor of a jaw and an aggressive variant of a CGC? Central giant cell carcinoma.
One is an aggressive lesion and another one is you think is not aggressive.
Giant cell tumor is also an aggressive lesion, but it is mostly seen in the long bones. But people say literature shows that it is included in the jaw also. So is there any variation in the
Two
treatment?
giant cell tumor of the jaws,
Yeah.
and then the central giant cell
Giant cell
granulomas which we have. Yes, it's a very rare entity to, I mean, Sumit ma'am, have you ever found a true giant cell tumor of the bone? I haven't seen one. I don't know. Maybe sir will be able to throw some light on the long bones, central giant cell tumors. Sadhu sir, can you throw some light on the treatment modalities you follow for the true giant cell tumors of the long bones?
Will you repeat your question?
Yes, sir. The question is how different is the treatment management for central giant cell lesions of the jaws and the true giant cell tumor of the long bones?
Now, first, giant cell tumor of the jaw. It was considered, when I was interested in these about 20 years back, that standard giant cell tumor occurs in those bones which develop in cartilage. Most of the jaw develops in membrane. So the real giant cell tumor of the jaw is rare. I think only small portion of the jaw develops in cartilage. Regarding treatment, if these structures are destroyed, the treatment is excision and reconstruction of the gap. In the limbs also, if the lesion is extremely localized, then you can cure it away and fill the gap with bone graft, either preserved bone or the autogenous bone graft taken from the patient himself. But if the lesion is extensive, then segmental resection of the bone is the standard treatment these days. And after segmental resection, you have to reconstruct the bone, either giving a vascularite graft, fibrillar graft, or any vascularite lateral graft, or if it is near the joint, then custom-made joint replacement. These are the standards now being adopted in long bones. Cure it out if the lesion is very small, and if you are sure that you can cure it away each every cell. Then another point is that in some cases the cavity is filled with bone cement. Now bone cement, when it sets, the temperature goes fairly high. And it is believed that whatever the cells have been left behind, that heat kills those cells. But disadvantage is that it produces necrosis of the surrounding bone also. If the necrosis is limited, the necrosed bone gets replaced by the healthy bone in due course of time. But if the necrosis is extensive, then probably it may again need resection and reconstruction. So excision or segmental resection, reconstruction is the treatment of CHOPS in the majority of cases with the patient coming late. Amputation is carried out in those cases where there are 2 or 3 recurrences and it has innervated the soft tissues so that the reconstruction of the limb is not possible. So far as radiotherapy is concerned, giant cell tumor is a bit radiosensitive in those sites which are unapproachable. Of course, now there is hardly any site in the body which cannot be approached by surgery, including that of spine. But in those cases, you can give treatment with a linear accelerator or with even cobalt flux. Now regarding bone cysts, we are now using are now using alendronate in simple bone cyst, the results are quite good. In aneurysmal bone cyst, it is plus minus. The dose is 35 to 70 milligrams every week to be taken early in the morning, empty stomach. And the patient is instructed not to lie down for at least 2 hours. It should not be given to those cases who have got signs and symptoms of peptic ulcer. It can be given continuously for a period of 6 months. Then you may give a gap for 2 months and then start again. Prolonged use of this alendronate, one of the complications is in the process of the jaw. Though that is rare, but it has been reported. One should be cautious about it.
Sir, I think it's not really enough. I hope it answers your question.
Now I would
Anybody
request.
else? Anybody else who wants to ask any question? Yes.
This question is just about the epidemiological spectrum of the fibrosis lesion, because I find them very, as a pathologist, I find them very challenging, because sometimes we don't have the clinical details, as you very rightly said, and the radiology to back it up. 2 lesions come in my mind which I always feel run neck and neck at which geographical distribution. One is cemento-ossifying fibroma and one is this fibrous dysplasia. So according to you, sir, which is much more prevalent in your area of investigative region which you come from, and what are the clinical features and radiological findings which we should know as pathologists which can guide us? I know there are cellularity, amount of cementums, nature of stroma, presence of lamellar bone or immature bone does help us also as a when we see a biopsy. But sometimes there we get some inadequate biopsies in which we don't have clinical details. So can you run a little bit of clinical presentation and the radiographical differences between cemento-ossifying fibroma versus a fibrous dysplasia?
Okay. Why I won't be able to give you is the exact percentages of the cases which we see in maybe the northern part of the country, is because these cases are being fairly distributed between plastic surgeons, ENT surgeons, general surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, and then also oral maxillofacial surgeons. And since we do not pool our resources, our knowledge, and we do not share at any kind of a forum the amount of cases which we do and the kind of treatments which we are employing on those patients and their final outcome, it's very, very difficult to say. Yes, that's true. Similarly, the situation is where I also send my biopsies to general pathologists and oral pathologists, and then also higher centers.